What if I told you that some of the most hyped inventions in modern history, things that genuinely seemed like they were about to change everything, just didn't? Not because the idea was bad, but because of a mix of bad timing, bad pricing, bad luck, or a world that just wasn't ready. History is full of inventions that should have worked, inventions that had the hype, the money, the backing, and in some cases, genuinely brilliant engineering behind them. And yet, they're not here anymore. Or if they are, they're a punchline, a cautionary tale, a Wikipedia article with the phrase commercial failure in the first paragraph. Today, we're going through the biggest technological misfires of the modern era. Not to make fun, but to actually understand why they failed. Because the story of a failed invention is almost always more interesting than the invention itself. Welcome to RetroChronica, where history, pop culture, and the moments you forgot actually get the deep dive they deserve. The 5 inventions we're reviewing share 2 qualities. They were ahead of their time and surrounded by enormous expectations. So we're answering the question, what actually went wrong? We do the research, we tell the story, and we make sure you actually walk away with something. Not just a list of things that flopped, but a framework for understanding why great ideas fail. And stick around to the end, because the last one on this list involves a product that Bill Gates himself called Microsoft's greatest mistake ever.
The Concorde's basic design features have been established, and its performance defined.
Cruising speed Mach 2.2 or 1,450 miles an hour.
Let's start in the sky, specifically at 60,000 feet, twice the altitude of a commercial flight, where a sleek, needle-nosed aircraft is cruising at Mach 2, twice the speed of sound. New York to London in under 3.5 hours. That was the Concorde, and for 27 years it was the most extraordinary passenger flight aircraft ever built. The Concorde's story begins in 1962, when Britain and France signed a treaty to develop a supersonic passenger aircraft together. This was at the height of the space age. Governments believed that speed was the future, and the country that owned the sky owned the future. By 1969, the Concorde had made its maiden test flight, and by January 21st, 1976, it entered commercial service, with British Airways flying London to Bahrain and Air France flying Paris to Rio de Janeiro on the same day by stopping in Dakar. At its peak, a round-trip ticket between New York and London could run you around $10,000. In the 1970s, passengers sipped champagne at the edge of the stratosphere while watching the curvature of the Earth. But here's the thing, the Concorde never recovered the enormous cost of its development. It burned fuel at a staggering rate, around 6,600 gallons per hour, and that's nearly twice as much as a Boeing 747, despite carrying only about a quarter of the passengers. Its noise was so extreme that it was banned from flying over land at supersonic speeds in most countries, including the United States, limiting it to just a handful of over-ocean routes. By the time the 2000s arrived, the regular Concorde service had been reduced almost entirely to transatlantic routes between New York and London and New York and Paris. And then came July 25th, 2000.
Well, as I got on the bus, somebody said the Concorde has crashed in France. And I told him not to be so bloody silly.
Air France Flight 4590, bound from Paris to New York, ran over a small piece of metal debris on the runway during takeoff. The debris punctured a tire, which exploded and sent shrapnel into a fuel tank. The tank ignited, the plane crashed 113 seconds after takeoff, killing all 109 people on board and 4 people on the ground. All Concorde flights were grounded, and when they resumed in 2001, the world had changed. After 9/11, demand for premium business travel dropped dramatically. Combined with soaring operation costs and an aging fleet, the Concorde's future was becoming increasingly difficult to justify. The wealthy business passengers who were Concorde's entire market eventually stopped flying. Load factors plummeted, and by October 24, 2003, the Concorde made its final commercial flight. But here's what the Concorde got right. The engineering was extraordinary. But what it got wrong was assuming that speed was what people actually wanted. Most travelers, even wealthy ones, ultimately care more about comfort, cost, and convenience. The Concorde offered exactly one of those 3, and you can't build a sustainable business on one.
All right. There it is. Now, what does it do?
This next one is a little different, because what makes this story so fascinating isn't just that it failed, it's how badly the hype preceded it. Before anyone in the public knew what it was, there were leaks. Codename Ginger, or just IT. Steve Jobs reportedly believed it would reshape cities when he saw IT. On December 3rd, 2001, the curtain lifted on Good Morning America, and IT turned out to be a scooter. Now, to be completely fair, the technology behind the Segway was genuinely remarkable. Dean Kamen, its inventor, was already a legend. He had developed developed portable insulin pumps, dialysis machines, and an advanced self-balancing wheelchair called iBot that could climb chairs. The Segway self-balancing system grew directly out of that wheelchair research, and expectations were high for the inventor.
Transporter will be available next year at a cost of about $3,000. Not bad, not very bad, guys. I mean, I don't know what you want to do with $3,000.
Right. Fits under the Christmas tree. Thanks, Sally.
But the reveal was the beginning of the end, because the problem wasn't the invention itself, it was the impossible expectations. It was a $5,000 electric scooter that you couldn't ride on sidewalks because it was too fast, and couldn't ride on roads because it was too slow. Cities had no legal framework for it, and in 2003, approximately 6,000 units sold were recalled due to battery management complications. This issue could cause the Segway to unexpectedly roll backwards mid-ride. In 2006, another 23,500 units were recalled due to a different software glitch that could throw riders from the device. And then the Segway's image quickly became associated with mall cops and tour groups. It never shook that image, ever. In 2009, Cayman sold Segway Inc. for just $9 million. In 2010, British millionaire Jimmy Heselden, who had bought the company, died in an accident while riding one off of the cliff of his estate. In 2020, Segway production officially ended. And yet, here's the twist. Today's wave of e-scooters, electric skateboards, and shared mobility devices like Bird and Lime all owe something to the path Segway helped pave. The idea was right. The price point, the size, and the timing were catastrophically wrong.
You've seen some really compelling demos here. They were slick, they were robust. This is going to be nothing like that. This can go wrong in about 500 different ways.
Now we're moving from physical transportation to something even more intimate, what you put on your face. In 2012, Google announced something that felt like it had been pulled directly from a science fiction film: smart glasses. A wearable computer and a tiny screen floating in front of your right eye, voice-activated, camera-enabled, and connected to the internet at all times. Google Glass was the future, and for a brief electric moment, it really seemed like it. The hype was real. In 2013, Google launched the Explorer program, a curated early access initiative where select users could purchase glass for $1,500 and test it in the real world. The program wasn't limited to developers and tech enthusiasts. Google also invited doctors, artists, athletes, educators, and other professionals to test glass in everyday life. A New York Times feature asked whether glass would usher in the end of privacy as we know it. And that was the first sign of trouble. Because the thing about a wearable camera on your face is that everyone around you is aware of it, or thinks they might be. Glass had a small indicator light when the camera was active, but most people didn't know what that light meant. And the assumption, reasonable honestly, was that the person wearing the glasses might be recording at any time. Many public businesses such as bars, gyms, and casinos began banning them, and the people who insisted on wearing them in public started getting a name: glass holes.
You just toggle through the menu like this, and you have to activate it kind of just little like this.
By January 2015, less than 3 years after launch, Google quietly discontinued the Explorer Edition. Google Glass wasn't a bad idea, and now with the rise of Meta's recording glasses, it shows that Google was simply ahead of its time. What it got wrong was one of the most fundamental rules of consumer tech. People don't just buy products for what they do. They buy them for how those products make them feel about themselves and how others will perceive them. And being called a glass hole wasn't exactly a sales pitch.
One of the cool things right here is that DirecTV has made an announcement that they're actually going to have a 3D channel that launches this month, so there'll be some content that you can play on your new 3D TV.
Quick. Do you remember when Avatar came out in 2009 and suddenly everything was going to be 3D? James Cameron's film broke virtually every box office record in existence, becoming the highest grossing film in history at the time with $2.8 billion made worldwide. And a huge part of that success was the 3D experience, the sense that you were genuinely inside the world of Pandora. TV manufacturers, supported by Hollywood studios, looked at those numbers and made a decision. 3D was the future of home entertainment. And by 2010, every major television manufacturer, Sony, Samsung, LG, Panasonic, was racing to bring 3D into your living room. The industry bet made sense at the time. In 2012 alone, manufacturers shipped 41 million 3D TV units globally. At the Consumer Electronics Show in 2010, Mitsubishi unveiled a 92-inch home cinema 3D TV. Toshiba showed a glasses-free 3D prototype. The moment felt unstoppable. And then people actually tried to use them. Here's the core problem with 3D TV, and it's embarrassingly simple. You had to wear glasses. Uncomfortable, expensive, brand brand-specific glasses. Active shutter glasses required batteries and Bluetooth syncing. Passive polarized glasses were cheap but incompatible with the active sets. If you had 4 people watching a movie, you needed 4 pairs of compatible glasses. And good luck if your glasses were from a different manufacturer than your TV. And the glasses weren't even the worst part. The content wasn't there. Unlike in theaters, where Avatar had been shot natively in 3D with purpose-built cameras, most 3D content at home was standard footage converted into 3D in post-production. The effect was noticeably worse. Flatter, dimmer, and with a narrower viewing angle than anyone sitting off center saw in an image that didn't quite work. Many viewers also reported eye strain, headaches, and nausea from extended viewing. Warnings were issued advising pregnant women and the elderly to use caution. That was not a great marketing position. By 2016, most major manufacturers had quietly stopped producing 3D-capable TVs. By 2017, they were gone entirely from the market, barely 7 years after their peak. But here's the brutal truth about 3D TV. There was never actually demand for it. There was excitement about Avatar, and the industry mistook excitement about a movie for excitement about the technology that delivered it. The theater experience worked because you're in the dark, you're stationary, and you're fully committed. Home TV doesn't work like that, and no amount of engineering can change how people actually behave in their living rooms.
After today, you will agree with us that with Windows Phone, we really have built, with our partners, a different kind of a phone.
And now the one Bill Gates himself described as Microsoft's greatest miss ever, the Windows Phone. This $7.6 billion mistake was due to Microsoft waiting too long to enter the mobile phone race, a market that, unlike the Segway, had a cemented future. Similar to Google's foresight on smart glasses, Microsoft actually saw the smartphone era coming. They had a mobile operating system before the iPhone existed, and they still lost. But let's set the scene. In early 2007, Microsoft's Windows Mobile held an 18% share of the smartphone market. And then Steve Jobs walked onto a stage in January 2007 and unveiled the iPhone. And after this, Microsoft spent an entire year watching its market share slide before taking action. Then Microsoft finally launched its response in 2010, the Windows Phone 7. Critics praised it and the hardware was high quality, but Microsoft had arrived 3 years late to the most important product category of the decade. By the time Windows Phone launched, iOS and Android had already built ecosystems, millions of apps and loyal users, developers building exclusively for those platforms. And developers are everything in mobile, because without apps, a smartphone isn't smart. While the Windows Phone's App Store boasted many apps, it didn't have those deemed essential for many years. No Instagram, YouTube, or Snapchat, social media apps that make or break the cell phone experience. The vicious cycle was inescapable. No users meant no developers mean no apps, and no apps mean no users. In a desperate move, Microsoft acquired Nokia's phone division in 2014 for $7.2 billion, hoping Nokia's software reputation and global distribution could fix the app gap. It couldn't. Nokia's stock had already fallen 75% by 2013. In 2017, Microsoft officially abandoned the Windows Phone platform altogether. Microsoft had the engineering, they had the distribution, and they had the money. But what they didn't have was urgency. And in technology, urgency is the most important thing. So, 5 inventions, 5 enormous promises, and 5 spectacular falls. And when you look at all of them together, a pattern starts to emerge. The Concorde failed because speed wasn't what people actually valued most. The Segway failed because it was too expensive and too early. Google Glass failed because it misread the social contract. 3D TV failed because it confused context for demand. And Windows Phone failed because it mistook engineering excellence for ecosystem. None of these teams were foolish. None of these inventions were bad ideas. In many cases, they were ahead of their time, which sounds like a compliment, but in business, it's often just another way of saying too early to survive. So here's the real question. Which failed invention do you think we're gonna look back on in 20 years and realize we got completely wrong? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know. And I'll see you in the next one right here on RetroChronica. If you're into this type of deep dive, the history, the hype, the wait, I had no idea that happened moments, the RetroChronica channel is exactly where you want to be. Subscribe so you don't miss out when the next one drops.